The latest. Thank you for your love and support. I appreciate you all. What we have never expected to see is actually happening. No wonder they say if there is life, we'll definitely meet again. We are the ones that people team up together, came here, united, and caused us havoc. They are still doing it. They are brothers who do not want to do away without each other. And always they make sure the African is the prey. But finally, when Africa decided to push back, to fight for our sovereignty, to reclaim whatever that is here, only three nations, we are seeing a change in the affairs of these people. The same unity that we are seeing, that we are asking ourselves to unite, is being divided. According to reports, the United States of America is facing heavy sanctions from European Union because they said enough of everything that they have received from the United States of America under Donald Trump. We have been seeing that EU leaders, when they meet in their summit, are always on the commission president to make sure that they have their own independency because they believe that other foreign powers are interfering in the affairs of European Union. And for that matter, they need to wake up and fight to protect themselves so that together they can have their sovereignty. And that is exactly what they are doing right now, because they've seen that the United States of America has interfered, and it's like US is trying to make European Union their, so they can control them all the time. But EU is fighting back, and they are resisting oppression and making sure that they give back what Donald Trump is giving to them. This is not about tariff war or trade war. This is about power and sovereignty. Just like we are calling on Africans to do, that our leaders need to unite so we can fight against any oppression that we are facing. Because European Union is resisting oppression. They've come together united to fight against a power that they think that is always on them, trying to put them at a position where they can dominate, like the way they have kept Africa.
So the European Union, the United Kingdom, Canada, and Australia just announced coordinated sanctions against the United States for the first time in history. You heard that right. America's closest allies, the nations that have stood with us through 2 world wars, through the Cold War, through every global crisis for nearly a century, have imposed economic penalties on the country they once considered their indispensable partner. And the target is unmistakably clear: Donald Trump and his inner circle. The sanctions freeze assets, ban travel, and restrict financial transactions for Trump, 17 members of his administration, and over 40 American companies connected to his business empire. The announcement came simultaneously from Brussels, London, Ottawa, and Canberra at precisely 6 a.m. Eastern Time. A coordinated strike designed to maximize impact before American markets opened. But guess what? This isn't about trade disputes or tariff disagreements. According to the joint statement released by all 4 governments, these sanctions are being imposed in response to documented corruption, constitutional violations, and the systematic undermining of democratic institutions that threatens the stability of the Western alliance. It's honestly hard to believe we've reached this point. This isn't just about strained diplomatic relationships or policy disagreements. We're talking about America's oldest allies treating the American president like they would treat a dictator from a hostile nation. And trust me, the implications for American power, prestige, and global standing are absolutely devastating. Let me fill you in on what's been happening. The relationship between Trump and traditional American allies has been deteriorating since his first term. He questioned NATO commitments, insulted Allied leaders, imposed tariffs on Canadian and European goods, and repeatedly suggested that America's security guarantees couldn't be trusted. From the get-go, Allied governments were concerned that Trump viewed partnerships built over decades as transactional arrangements to be renegotiated or abandoned. But here's where the rubber meets the road. According to Politico's December 5th report, Allied intelligence services have been sharing information for months about what they describe as the complete breakdown of constitutional governance in the United States. The leaked financial documents showing foreign payments to Trump reportedly confirmed suspicions that Allied intelligence agencies had developed through their own sources. One European intelligence official told reporters that they had been watching money flow to Trump from adversarial governments for years, but couldn't prove the full scope until the Desert Files leak. This mess is unfolding because Allied governments concluded that working with Trump's administration had become impossible, and that treating the United States as a normal partner was enabling corruption that threatened their own security. The coordinated sanctions represent a collective judgment that diplomatic engagement has failed, and that stronger measures are necessary. And before we go any further, let's be real for a second. Allies sanctioning the United States is genuinely unprecedented. For 250 years, America has been the nation that imposes sanctions, not the nation that receives them. The psychological and strategic shock of this reversal cannot be overstated. Now, back to the matter at hand. Here's where it gets interesting. Reports from December 5th revealed just how extensive the preparation for this action was. According to CNN, Allied governments began secretly coordinating in late summer after it became clear that Trump's second term would not moderate his approach. Weekly video conferences between senior officials from all four governments developed the sanctions framework, identified targets, and planned the simultaneous announcement. The sanctions themselves are comprehensive. They freeze all assets held in allied nations by the designated individuals and entities. They ban all travel to the European Union, UK, Canada, and Australia. They prohibit any financial institutions under Allied jurisdiction from processing transactions for sanctioned parties. And they warned that secondary sanctions may be applied to any entity that helps sanctioned parties evade these restrictions. According to the joint statement, the legal basis for these sanctions includes documented evidence of corruption through foreign payments, obstruction of justice in federal proceedings, and actions that constitute a fundamental threat to democratic governance in a manner that endangers the security of allied nations. Essentially, America's allies have concluded that Trump represents a threat to their security and have responded with the tools they typically reserve for hostile regimes. This wasn't a hasty reaction. This was months of deliberate planning culminating in coordinated action. This announcement sent shockwaves through global financial markets because it raised immediate questions about American economic stability and the dollar's role as the world's reserve currency. The S&P 500 futures dropped over 4% within an hour of the announcement. Gold prices spiked. Treasury yields gyrated wildly as traders tried to assess what Allied sanctions against America would mean. Now, this isn't the first time we've seen international concern about Trump's conduct translate into concrete action. The pattern of Allied frustration has been building throughout his return to power. Just think about how European leaders responded to Trump's suggestions that NATO commitments might not be honored. At a Munich security conference, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen warned that Europe needed to prepare for an America that might not be a reliable partner. Defense spending across Europe increased dramatically as governments hedged against American abandonment. Then there was the G7 summit fiasco earlier this year. Trump refused to sign the joint communiqué, insulted the Canadian Prime Minister publicly, and reportedly told other leaders that America didn't need allies who weren't paying their fair share. According to a European diplomat who spoke to The Guardian, the summit ended with other leaders genuinely questioning whether the Western alliance could survive. And let's not forget how Allied governments reacted to the leaked financial documents showing payments from foreign adversaries. Within hours of that leak, multiple Allied foreign ministers issued statements expressing grave concern and calling for transparency. When Trump responded by attacking the journalists and calling the documents fake, Allied governments noted that no evidence was offered to contradict the documented payments. Even the intelligence-sharing relationship, the crown jewel of the Western alliance, has reportedly been compromised. According to MSNBC's reporting, Allied intelligence services have restricted what they share with American counterparts out of concern that information might reach Trump and through him, the foreign governments making payments to him. Now it looks like Allied patience has finally been exhausted. The sanctions represent a judgment that engagement with Trump has become counterproductive. So what specifically triggered this coordinated action at this particular moment? Well, it all boils down to the accumulation of evidence reaching a tipping point combined with an incident that made delay impossible. The impasse happened because Allied governments had been quietly urging American institutions to address the crisis internally. They preferred that Congress, the courts, or voters solve the Trump problem without international intervention, but Congress remained paralyzed. Courts moved slowly, and the accumulating evidence of corruption went unaddressed. Now here's the kicker. According to sources who spoke with CBS News, the final trigger was intelligence suggesting that Trump had shared classified information provided by Allied services with Russian officials. One source described an intercepted communication in which a Russian intelligence officer discussed information that could only have come from Allied sources shared with the United States. Whether Trump shared this information deliberately or inadvertently, Allied governments concluded their intelligence assets were at risk, as long as they continued treating America as a trusted partner. While American officials have denied any intelligence compromise, Allied governments apparently found the evidence compelling enough to act. According to a British official quoted by The Guardian, they were faced with a choice between protecting their intelligence sources and maintaining a fiction of normal relations with Washington. This was the moment the Western alliance fractured in ways not seen since before World War II. The fundamental assumption of American foreign policy that democratic allies will always stand together has been shattered by allies who concluded that America's current leadership was too corrupt to trust. And then came Trump's response, which managed to make an already catastrophic situation worse. He took to Truth Social within minutes of the announcement, calling Allied leaders globalist traitors and threatening to withdraw all American troops from Europe and cancel all defense agreements immediately. He called the sanctions an act of war and suggested that America might need to reconsider who its real friends are. But then, when financial markets continued to plummet and Republican senators began expressing concern, Trump's threat of immediate military withdrawal was walked back by administration officials. The mixed messages created additional uncertainty about American policy and further damaged confidence in American leadership. Now, this left the American government in an impossible position. On one side, responding aggressively to Allied sanctions could escalate the crisis into a complete rupture of the Western alliance. Withdrawing troops, canceling agreements, and imposing counter-sanctions on allies would leave America isolated and would delight adversaries like Russia and China. On the flip side, accepting the sanctions without response would be seen domestically as humiliating weakness. Trump's base would demand retaliation. The tricky part is that every response option makes things worse. So the administration is caught in a bind. They can either escalate by withdrawing from NATO and imposing counter-sanctions, which means destroying alliances built over generations and handing strategic victories to Putin and Xi. That would reshape the global order in ways that damage American interests for decades, or they can seek to negotiate a de-escalation, which means acknowledging that Allied concerns have some legitimacy and potentially cooperating with investigations. But that contradicts everything Trump has said about the witch hunt against him. It's a tough situation, and it's entirely of Trump's making. Years of attacking allies, questioning commitments, and now documented evidence of corruption have produced consequences that cannot be spun away. This whole scenario is causing complete chaos throughout Washington. If America's closest allies have sanctioned the president, every assumption about American foreign policy needs to be reconsidered. Career diplomats are reportedly in shock. Pentagon officials are trying to assess what Allied sanctions mean for ongoing military cooperation. Intelligence officials are grappling with the collapse of sharing arrangements that have been foundational for decades. Those Republican senators who have been defending Trump are now facing impossible questions. According to Politico, several senators issued statements expressing concern about Allied actions without directly defending Trump. The careful wording suggested they were looking for exits. Meanwhile, Democrats are calling for emergency hearings and demanding that Congress assert itself to repair Allied relationships.
That the people who came into the continent divided Africa, and Africa is finding it so difficult to unite. Just some few people who came here and divided Africa, over billions of people are finding it so difficult to unite themselves and to liberate themselves. So we need to also join the trend. The whole world, everybody is changing. The only person that is still sleeping is Africans. Africans, we are just sitting down doing the same old things, expecting different results, which we will never get because things are not done in that manner. We need to fight for that which we want. And that is why we are seeing that Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, the leaders, are always calling on the African to fight for sovereignty. This is the time for the African to also wake up and fight for the total liberation that we are looking for. We cannot continue to be where we are for the world to move ahead, and ours is to be begging for people to let us be, because it's like the least opportunity that our leaders get is to always ask for people to let us be, to let Africa to have its sovereignty. We don't have to beg, like Captain Ibrahim Traore said. Freedom is taken and not given. So if actually we are ready as Africans to fight for our freedom, we should be ready to fight for it and not to be asking for people to give it to us, because the same people that we are asking for them to give us the liberation that we are looking for depends heavily on Africa. Enough of always sitting there expecting things to be done, like somebody should come and do something for us, as if we are handicaps and we cannot do things on our own. We need to understand that in this world, whatever that you need to fight for it and not to be expecting somebody to give it to you, because this world is the survival of the fittest, and for that matter, Africans, we need to fight to be able to survive, and not for us to be begging for people to give us everything as if we cannot do anything for ourselves. We are seeing the dynamics, the changes, and everything that is happening around the world, but we are always in our comfortable zone expecting things to be done in a way that will please us. We are expecting people to give us. We are not handicapped, and for that matter, we need to wake up, fight for the sovereignty that we are looking for. Enough of everything. This is the time that the African must cause a change, because everybody, the whole world globally, we are seeing how things are changing. Except Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, the rest of the leaders in the democratically elected are still sleeping, repeating the same mistakes, expecting different results, which we will never get as Africans. This is our time as well to change, because change is constant. Change is constant, and until we change, we will never get to our destination. Our leaders, our freedom fighters, it got to a point they have to change to fight, and that is why we claim we have freedom. And if we are still waiting for people to come and give us things without readiness to fight for that which we want, then I wonder what we are doing, because the world is not waiting for anybody, neither is time waiting for us. But if we choose to continue to be sleeping, we'll continue to be slaves forever and ever. You and I need to understand that things are done based on the way we lay out the things, but not how other people will perceive us and want to see us and want to use us for. If we do not fight for that which we are looking for, we'll continue to be where we are. This is the perfect opportunity, because now everybody will want to play safe. We want to play the angel in the sight of Africa in order to make sure they continue to be getting what they want. We must know that the world has changed. As they are changing their tactics, we need to also change our approach towards their tactics. Until then, you, the African, will continue to be a slave, and you continue to be a slave forever and ever. A slave that do not rebel does not deserve pity, like Captain Ibrahim Traore will always tell you, the African. We are the only ones that can set ourselves free. United we stand, divided we fall. And united we keep standing forever and ever. The greatest enemy of the African is mental slavery. So let's decolonize ourselves from mental slavery. Let's keep sharing to educate our brothers and sisters. Together we make African great for ourselves and the next generations that are going to come. So that's the latest around the world and in the United States of America.